Welcome to the Crimson Engine. My name is 𝙍𝙁𝙄𝙄𝙀. Last video I talked about the differences between very cheap gear on one hand and very expensive gear on the other. So in this video I thought I would put my money where my mouth is and actually compare two different lights. In this instance, it is the cheapest light I own and the most expensive light I own. I'm going to test them for performance, clarity, versatility, and see if you really are getting that much more for your money. The two lights in question are the Hudson Spyder Mozzie. This is a 200 watt LED array. It is bicolor. It is very configurable into lots of different settings. You can use it raw like this, just with the individual LEDs, or you can bounce it into an umbrella, push it through any other kind of infiltration. It has enough power to do that. This is the power supply. I've got it running off a V-mount battery. The light folds up into this cool little bundle, and the whole thing comes in this Pelican case. The cheapest light I own is this. This is the Amaran 60D daylight. It's by Aperture. You can plug it straight into a V-mount battery. There's even a mounting port on it. It's only 60 watts. It's extremely light and versatile and carryable. It does have a cool built-in Bowens mount. Comes in this cool little carrying case. It's also available in this flavor, which is bicolor. So how are these two lights, which are, $120 and $4,000, going to compare in the real world? Let's find out. First thing I did was put the Hudson Spyder Redback in its little softbox and point it straight at my subject. And I got this very beautiful portrait style lighting. To compare, I put the Aperture in a similar size softbox, pointed it straight at the subject, 45 degrees above and 45 degrees to the side, and got something pretty similar. The next thing I did was move the camera in, but the same lens, keep the light where it was, and add a below bounce, so an under bounce that the actress was holding, and I did the same on the Aperture light. And you can see something pretty similar, but if you put them side by side, the Hudson Spyder has a lot more dimension to it, meaning there's more variation in the tones. I have to say it's not very often you'd use such a small source to illuminate a subject, so now I converted the Redback into its bounce position and put a 7-foot white umbrella above the talent, off to the side a little bit, and you can see you get this still a great close-up, illuminates the whole body, but it's a lot easier to shoot around because you could really almost shoot 360 with this kind of lighting. I did the same thing with the Aperture, though because it sits off to the side, it doesn't give quite the same illumination. You can see it's not as forward as the Spyder, but still pretty great. So the next thing I wanted to see was how I could use the Redback raw, meaning just without any filtration on it, to enable to match the levels of the talent with the outside bright snow-covered landscape. And you see here, even at, I think it was 50 or 60% power, it had no trouble at all matching levels outside. When I tried to do this with the Aperture light, I had to still use a softbox, or else it would have been much too harsh. It would have been too small and not given the same light. But you see, I had to focus it right in and turn it up all the way and actually get the light much closer to the subject. It's not that it can't be done, it's just that you need to use it in such a way as you can get the light closer, and that's going to limit your blocking choices. The next thing I wanted to try was using the film like you would on set as part of a scene to illuminate someone talking to someone else. So we pulled the couch out to the middle of the room, bounced the Redback into the 6-foot wide umbrella on a boom arm, and you can see that's the natural lighting. And then this is with the light turned on. But because of the boom arm, I'm able to get quite a wide shot. And as I go into my close-up, I added a little bit of bounce in the bottom right-hand corner, and you're able to get what I think is a pretty cinematic image. Comparing that with the Aperture light into the same umbrella on the same boom arm, pretty similar outcome, maybe not as much punch, maybe not as much dimension, maybe a little different in the color temperature, but for what it's worth, also a very nice, very cinematic image. So what is different about the quality of light of these two fixtures? It's very clear that the Hudson Spyder Mozzie has a far higher build quality, far higher configurability. It is 4 times brighter. It is, all in all, a professional light through and through, whereas the aperture is much more of a prosumer fixture. But as we've seen, you can get the aperture to do sometimes 80 or 90% of the result of the Hudson Spyder Mozzie. So assuming that doesn't break in some unforeseen way, they're cheap enough that you could always bring along extras. What are you actually going to see on the model or the actor's face that is different between these two lights? Well, the real answer to this is fall off. When you have multiple points of light arrayed in this way, each hitting the subject at a slightly different strength, you get a much more dimensional and complex fall off. That means from one side of the person's face in the bright spot to the other side of the person's face, or the tip of their nose, or this part here, you're going to see a change in the quality of light. There's going to be variation, and that makes the light look that much more natural. Because the aperture is a monolight, it's all coming from a single source, even if you bounce it into the silver umbrella like we've done here, you get a much more uniform fall off in the light. It's much more uniform and more standard. Because of all the unique LEDs in the Hudson Spyder, you get much more play, you get much more dimension. The subject itself seems more three-dimensional. It seems to come off the screen. And that's why these lights get used time and time again on big productions, and why they build them to such a high standard, and why they cost what they do. But really, the big message I wanted people to take away from this video isn't that the redback is that much better, or that the aperture can do almost as well for 1/25th the cost. It's that you shouldn't wait until you can afford lights like this to go out and shoot the movies that you want to shoot and tell the stories that you want to tell. With a little bit of ingenuity and a little bit of patience, you can get almost as good as much more expensive tools. This comes down to what my whole filmmaking philosophy is, and what really this channel is about. Ever since the C200 days, where I really relaunched this channel and started making all this content, because I discovered that even though I couldn't afford to hire or buy an Arri Alexa, I could get my hands on something that did 90% of what I needed it to do, not the whole scope of the technology, but what my individual projects needed. And as a result, I could start making film straight away. People make products for a market's needs. And we're lucky enough to live in a time when there are so many various lights and cameras and lenses out there. You just have to use what you can afford, what's within your means, and then make the most of its limitations, whatever they are. With this mindset, you can start telling your stories right now and start improving as a filmmaker, rather than dreaming about high-ticket items. If you're interested in more videos about gear and about lighting, check out CanonMasterclass.com. I have over 20 courses on lighting, on gear, on ratios, on cameras. You can buy them individually, or you can stream the entire site for one low monthly price. Check the description for links to the gear that I used in these videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.